Recently on a client project, I had to create a template, and in that template, I needed to create some drop-down menus for the client. Now, each time the template was duplicated, we had to grab our drop-down menu items from different data sources depending on the needs of the person making a copy of the template. As such, I couldn't just use Google Sheets to make this. I had to use some Google Apps Script to draw that data in. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use drop-down menus using Google Apps Scripts in your Google Sheets. So let's get started. In this tutorial, we'll go through some basics of creating data validation drop-down menus in our Google Sheets. And then if there's enough interest in this tutorial, I might make some more complex or more detailed ones in future. So let me know in the comments below after the end of the tutorial if you want to see some more drop-down tutorials like this. So I have a starter sheet here, and there is a link to this starter sheet in the description below if you want to play along. And as always, I encourage that you do because that's the best way to learn. In your starter sheet, head over and open up the connected app script, and your connected app script sheets should look like this in your Google App Script IDE. It will have two Google App Script files here. The first one will be the code.js file, which we will be working in, and also the globals.js file, which will have the sample data that you don't have to generate for yourself, making your life heaps easier. All right. So the first thing we want to do is just create a general drop-down list based on a list of data. So what we'll do is we'll replace the my function to something more explicit like create drop-down. Cool bananas. Create the constant variable to grab the spreadsheet information, and that will be const and ss for spreadsheet. And that's going to be equal to the spreadsheet app get active spreadsheet, this one here. And then we'll create another constant variable, that's one that doesn't change, and that will be called sheet. So we're not choosing one of these other sheet tabs down the bottom here. So let's go ss to call our spreadsheet, and then get sheet by name. Cool. So what name do we want to use? It's this one down here. We could type it in, but I'm a bit of a numpty, so I'm just going to double click the sheet tab here to select it all, hit Control C to copy, and then in single or double quotation marks, paste it in. Then I know I haven't made a mistake. So now we need to identify the cell. So the cell we want to create our drop-down rule for, and that's going to be for us A1 up the top here. Let's create a new constant variable called cell, and that's going to be equal to sheet.getRange, and for us that will be A1. So I'm hard coding in the values here. Good practice is to make the values either at the top of your function or in a global value at the top, but just for this tutorial it makes things a little bit easier for you to see what's going on when I hard code the values in. And I've just noticed up the top here we've got range instead of range. Well done me. And now that we've collected the range, what we need to do is grab the cell and we can say set data validation. And inside that we need to put in a rule. So let's type in rule, and we'll go back up top and create the rule argument. So this variable, so const rule equals, and now we need to call the spreadsheet app again to get the data validation builder, and we will say new data validation, is the second one here, and brackets, and then we'll chain together a couple other things. So it's a builder here, it's like a constructor. So we'll hit tab and we'll say require, and we've got a list of data validation types that we can require. What we want to grab is the require, and we scroll down a bit, so value in list for this example. And what does this list require? Well, it looks like it requires an array of list items here. So let's make our array here just explicit for the time being. We'll say yes, yes, comma, no. Nice and easy. And then at the end, we need to tell Google Apps Script that we want to build this data validation rule. Now we'll hit save. We'll give it a run, and you might have to go through authorization on your first run. So go through that, and then it should all work. Now you can see over the left here, if you've watched, if not, use the left arrow key to go back in the video. a few seconds and you will see that the drop down arrow has appeared over to the left here with our choices, yes and no. Cool. So let's go ahead and try and overwrite that with our list in our globals. So I've got a list of goats here. As you can see by my logo, I do have quite the goat, let's not call it fetish, but just say appreciation.
Me.
And let's go down and change our require value list to the array of goats that we have here. Let's go over here and double click the goats global constant variable here. Go back to our code.gs file and put that in as a variable here. Now this is a much handier way because then we can list out things and modify from a global GS file that's easier for us to read. So I'll hit save now. And when I hit run, have a look at what happens over on the left hand side here. So we'll go ahead and hit run. And we've got a little red tab here to say that this is invalid. So it doesn't change the value behind it until you make that change. So we could do that programmatically, which I might show you a bit in a moment. But now we do, from our drop-down list, have our list of goats. We can do a bit of formatting with our data validation as well. So if I right click on this and go to data validation here and click this item, and you can see in these advanced options that we can show help text, we can show reject warnings. Now we can apply those programmatically as well. As of recording this video, however, we don't have chips available to us for our drop-down menu, unfortunately. All right, so I'm going to close this now to make it easier for you to see. And let's just make a copy of what we got and just add in some advanced rules. So I'm just going to copy this current script we have here, move it down here. Now we will have to change the function name because you should only have one name of each type of function or variable. So let's put an underscore in here and just put in advanced rules. All right, so we're still doing the same thing. We're applying the same data validation to this A1 cell here. However, we're going to add in 2 extra rules. So where do we put the rules? As I mentioned, when we build a rule, we use the spreadsheet app new data validation builder here. This allows us to chain a certain amount of information into our build of the particular data validation rule. So let's just go enter again between require value in list and just put in a decimal here. And let's just scroll down until we find something like our set allow invalid rule here. So right now it's not strictly preventing us from selecting anything other than the items in our current list. So let's add a brace here. And what we can do here is now use a boolean to say, yeah, we don't want anything else to be chosen except for what we provide in our list. So we'll say true. And then let's put in some helpful help criteria text here to explain what needs to be added in this drop-down list. So say, please select our favorite goat. I know my American friends, there's a U in favorite. Please don't be too enraged. From the list. The extra I is enraging though. There we go. Cool. Oh, and before we run, we just want to make sure that set allow invalid should be set to false. So now we're not being as permissive. We strictly want the selection to be goats. So let's go ahead and clear out the data validation very quickly and run our script now, making sure that we've selected create drop-down advanced rules, and we'll hit run. Cool, and let's just select one of our glorious goats. And let's change that to not a goat, exclamation mark. And then we've got an error. Please select a favorite goat only from the list. Cool. So everything's working out fine. Great. What about if we want to apply the same list of drop-down items to a range? So that's fairly simple. Let's go up and grab our standard drop-down list here, the one we did at the start, and hit Control C to copy. And let's just go down and hit Control V to paste, maybe a bit of space so you can see what's going on. There we go. Okay, and let's of course rename that. We'll say create drop down multi-range. And then we'll keep our standard drop down as it is. And here we're going to change the sheet get range to a range of items, so not just one cell. So we might want to go from A1 for some reason. We also want it to go from B10. So we want to expand it, all the drop downs to be exactly like this, from A1 down to B10. Don't know why. Sounds like a fun idea. Now, this isn't a cell anymore, so let's be a bit more explicit in what we're going to be collecting here. So I'm just going to double click cell and hit Control D to select the two instances of that cell and rename that to range. And that's essentially all we need to do. How about we also set the first item in that range to Alpine as well. So that first item here, which is going to be the 0th item in our globals array here. So how are we going to do that? So that's fairly easy. We've already got the range selected, so we can say range here, range dot set value. Just a single value. Don't use the S one here because this allows us to apply a single value to multiple ranges. And we're going to call the goats global array here, and we're going to select the 0th item in that array, and we'll hit save. All right, so let's go up and change our function to the most recent one we've just created, and we'll just take that off there so you can see what's going on, and we'll hit run. Goat-as is not defined because it's goats. Let's try that, save, run. All right, cool. So now Alpine's been selected for each one of these items here. And you can select a different item as you go and create your goats as needed. Looking good. So what else can we do with our drop-down list? What about if we want the drop-down list to occur on edit? So if we edit something, for example, this checkbox, we want the drop-down list to appear. But if we take the checkbox tick off the box, we want the drop-down list to disappear. Okay, so let's go ahead and just clear this out so we can see what's going on. What we can do with this is create a onEdit simple trigger here, and this is a custom Google Apps Scripts trigger function. So let's say function onEdit, and this function will be called, if Google Apps Scripts sees this function in your code, the function will be called every time you make an edit on your sheet physically. First, we probably want to get the ranges A1 notation. Now, the onEdit function takes a event parameter, which is commonly notated as an E. And this parameter is an object containing important information about the cell and the spreadsheet you're working on. Two most important of which are range for us and value. So first, let's create the cell A1 notation name. So basically, standard drop down exclamation mark A1 up the top here. So we don't want to hard code this, we want to draw this in from our onEdit, and to do this we can create a constant variable called range A1 notation. It's going to be equal to a string, and we're going to use template literals here, or backticks. And then inside that we're going to put a single quotation mark, and then we want to put in a variable here, and that's going to come from our event parameter, that E there. So we'll say $, curly braces, E.range, and then that's going to grab the range constructor, and from that range constructor we can grab the get sheets or get sheet. So that's going to find the sheet of the selected range, and then we need to get the name of that sheet. Cool. So this range A1 notation here is going to help us find the location that this edit is occurring. And if it occurs on this D1 cell here, then we want to do something to A1. If it occurs anywhere else, we don't want to do anything. What's next? We want to create an exclamation mark here inside our string, and then we want to also add in another argument with a $, curly braces, and what's that argument going to be? Well, it's be E.range again, and then we want get A1 notation. All right, we can test this out a little bit. by going spreadsheet, app, I don't know, get active spreadsheet, and then toast to make a little toast here. And what are we going to toast? Let's toast the range A1 notation. Hit space here. All right, so let's make an edit inside any cell. Hit tab. Standard drop down B4. So that's what we created here. What if we click this checkbox here? Standard drop down D1. Awesome. If we go to another sheet tab here and add a 1, source list N10. Cool, that's exactly what we want. Let's delete that one. We should get another toast. Cool, and we'll head back and get rid of this we. And uncheck. Nice, okay. The toast is annoying us, so we'll delete that. Let's make a check now. So let's create an if statement. So we'll say the D1 location of standard dropdown will never change. That's the only instance of the onEdit occurrence where we want to insert our data validation when this is checked to true in A1 here. So let's create an if statement. So if range A1 notation is not equal to this standard dropdown, acquire this from over here. Make sure we put this in single quotation marks. Exclamation point D1. So if that is not equal to that, we don't want to do anything with our onEdit, so we return. Nice simple way of making an if statement and clearing it out. Otherwise, if it does match, we want to check if the value in this D1 is equal to true or false. So we can say if e.value is equal to true, then what do we want to do? Well, we want to create our dropdown. So we don't need to make another function for this, do we? So let's just go up here and reference this create dropdown. Let's call it here, create dropdown. So that function will be called here now. All right, so let's hit save. Give that a quick test. So if I add something here, hello, nothing happens. Good. Delete. Nothing also happens. What about if we check the box? Oh, our dropdown has appeared. What if we want to delete that when we uncheck this? Let's create an else statement here. So we'll say else. Oh, if we spell else properly, E-L-S-E. And let's create a delete drop down function. All right, let's put this one just below. So we'll say function delete drop down. And here we need to create, grab our spreadsheet and our standard drop down and then our range again. So essentially we need all this stuff here. So we'll copy that and just paste that in here. So once we've got the cell that we want to target to delete, we can just say cell dot clear data validations. And that's a Google Apps Script method for the range class. Okay, we'll hit save now. And let's uncheck this. And our drop-down menu is gone. We'll check it again. And our drop-down menu has appeared. We'll put an item in here and then we'll uncheck. And then it's disappeared. So if you wanted just a once-off drop-down situation, the first time the user puts in a value, then this might be handy for you as well. So just note there are a couple of limitations to using the onEdit. So for example, we can't call from another data source. So maybe I'm drawing data from an external API, then the onEdit won't work because it is limited to working just inside the current ecosystem. So please keep that in mind. Also, it won't update programmatically running some Google script that affects the cell. For example, D1 is checked programmatically, then onEdit will not occur or will not be triggered either. Now, another thing we can do in Google Apps Script dropdowns is create the dropdown list from a certain range of cells in our sheet, just like we can in Google Sheets. So let's go ahead and see how that works. So if you look down in your sheet tabs, and we will scroll up and go to the left, I have a list of emojis in from cell A1 through to A5 here, just for a fun example. And we want to add a drop down in our drop down from range sheet tab in A1 here. So not too much changes here. Let's go up to the very top and grab our create drop down function here, and we'll hit Control V to paste, and we'll say create dropdown underscore, what should we call this, from range. Cool. So we need to change these sketch sheet names because we're going to put this in our drop down from range. I'm just going to double click the sheet tab, hit Control C to copy, go back over, and Control V to paste over the top. We'll keep the cell as it is. We also need a source range as well. So underneath our cell, let's create another constant variable called range underscore or range list. And that's going to be equal to ss get range. And we want to grab the source list range here. So let's just use A1 notation again, double quotation marks. It's going to be single quotation mark, source list inside that, exclamation mark, A1 to A5. So A1 colon A5, and that should get that range here. Nice. Okay, so this is just another way of accessing a range from the root spreadsheet instead of getting the sheet first and then the cell and then the range. Okay, so what do we need to change here? So instead of require value in list, we need to do something else. So select that and hit period, and then require value in range here. And then all we need is, as you can see in the example, we just need the range list. So let's call range list. Hit save. All right, let's go down to our drop down from range here, and let's head up to our function list and grab this last function and hit run. Oh, ss get range ranichi. We are trying out different types of the word range in this tutorial. We'll hit run again. Okay, cool. Now we've got our drop down, and each one of our drop downs is our emojis here. Cool. Our last basic example here is we will create a different drop down for each range of cells that we select. So what I'm going to do is select the different drop down sheet tab here. And for example, here I have a list of products on my website. I have a list of courses, a list of add-ons, and a list of tools here. And I want to create a selection, drop-down menu for each one of these cells here programmatically. So how do we go about doing that one? So over here in my globals sheet, I have a products global variable, and it's a 2D array. And the first array is my courses, the second array add-ons, and the third array is my tools. How about we do this last one from scratch again? I encourage you to do too, just get some muscle memory in, and we will create our function, and that's going to be called create different dropdowns. And our first item is going to be a constant variable spreadsheet, ss equals spreadsheet app. See if you can raise a head for the first bit. Get active spreadsheet, and then constant we need is sheet, and that's going to be equal to ss.get sheet by name. What is the name? Different drop downs. Hit Control C, Control V. Nice. Next, let's get the range we want to add our data into. So that's going to be B2 to B4, const equals range, const range equals, and that will be sheets or sheet dot get range. And we'll use some A1 notation again, which will be B2 colon B4. Nice. So the next thing we need to do is to create our list of rules. We can create rules in an array with the new data validation, and they essentially take an array of rules then. So we can do this by mapping through our products list and creating a rule for each one of the items. So we'll create a rule for this section of the array, we'll create a rule of this array, and we'll create a rule for this one as well. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll say const rules with an S this time, and we'll call our products global variable. And what we're going to use is the JavaScript map method or map method here. And that's going to take a function with the argument category. That's a category for each one of our items. So we'll have a courses, add-ons, and tools. So it's our outer array of that 2D array I mentioned before. So category. And then we want some curly braces, hit enter for a new line. And now we'll do it again, just to be cheeky. Okay. And let's create a rule for each one of the values in the top level of our products. So here's our top level array here. There are 3 items in that top level array. So this will be the courses, add-ons, and tools. All right, so let's go const rule. So singular rule this time equals spreadsheet app new data validation, and make sure we spell const properly. And let's chain our rules here. So all we want to do is require value in list, and our list value is going to be every iteration of this products array. So here we're going to add in category here. And then once that's been added in, we're going to build out that rule. Okay, so once we've built our rule here, we need to put our rule back into our rules array, and we do that by returning it. So we can go return rule, and that will generate a rule for each one of these product categories here. Goodo. Okay, return rules. Now that's going to return a single array. We need to store a 2D array within our rules. So each rule needs to be encapsulated in its own array. Why is this? We could build rules in a matrix running across and running down. So I could have, for example, rule here for B and C here as well. And then this would iterate on top of each other, so then we'd have 3 more rules running down. We don't want to do that now. We just want to create the single rule, but we need to make sure that our rules array is a 2D array that is equal to the range that we have selected here. Now, by rights, you could add any type of data validation into this rule set here. Perhaps you want in B2 a drop-down list. The next one you are calling from a range for your drop-down list, then a date picker, and so on. But for us, we're just going to use our drop-down list here. So here we're going to go range dot set, and here we'll say set data validations with an S here. S is important, and then we're going to add in our rules. We'll hit save. Cool. Now we'll go up and make sure create different drop-down is selected. And now let's hit run to see if everything works out okay. Cool. So now on our courses, we should have our list of courses. So we've got a list of courses here. On our add-ons, we should have my 3 add-ons. Yes, we do. And then for tools, let's see what we have. We have our 3 different tools as well. Okay, I think that covers the basics of creating Google Sheets dropdowns with Google Apps Scripts. So there's a lot of things you could do with this. You might want to change or limit the number of selections after a previous dropdown has been selected. We might even try and look at how to prevent or stop this edit button, or stopping a user from adding a new button, and then we'll have an onEdit situation which looks at the number of new dropdowns and removes that item. So let me know in the description below if there's any other edge cases you are interested in, and if I get a chance, I'll try and do a tutorial on those for you. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial, please hit that like button, and if you want to see more tutorials like this, subscribe. Until next time.